White House Office by Rick Dearborn. From popular culture to academia, the American presidency has long been a prominent fixture of the national imagination. Naturally so, since it is the beating heart of our nation's power and prestige. It has played, for instance, a feature role in innumerable movies and television shows and has been prodded, analyzed, and critiqued by countless books, essays, and studies. But like nearly everything else in life, there is no substitute for firsthand experience, which this manual has compiled from the experience of presidential appointees and provides an accessible form for future use. With respect to the presidency, it is best to begin with our republic's foundational document. The Constitution gives the executive power to the president. It designates him as commander in chief and gives him the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It further prescribes that the president might seek the assistance of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. Beginning with George Washington, every president has been supported by some form of White House office consisting of direct staff officers as well as a cabinet comprised of department and agency heads. Since the inaugural administration of the late 18th century, citizens have chosen to devote both their time and their talent to defending and strengthening our nation by serving at the pleasure of the President. Their shared patriotic endeavor has proven to be a noble one, not least because the jobs in what is now known as the White House Office, WHO, are among the most demanding in all of government. The President must rely on the men and women appointed to the WHO. There are simply not enough hours in the day to manage the affairs of state single-handedly. So delegation is not just advisable, it is essential. The decisions that assistants and senior advisors make will directly impact the administration, its legacy, and most important, the fate of the country. Their agenda must therefore be the president's agenda. Choosing who will carry out that agenda on a daily basis is not only one of the first decisions a president makes in office, but also one of the most critical. The tone and tempo of an administration are often determined on January 20th. Chief of Staff. As with most of the positions that will be covered in this first chapter, the Chief of Staff is also an assistant to the President. However, the Chief is truly first among equals. Of all presidential staff members, the Chief is the most critical to implementation of the President's vision for the country. The Chief also has a dual role as manager of the staffs of both the WHO and the Executive Office of the President, the EOP. The Chief of Staff's first managerial task is to establish an organizational chart for the WHO. It should be simple and contain clear lines of authority and responsibility to avoid conflict. It should also identify specific points of contact for each element of the government outside of the White House. These contacts should include the White House liaisons who are selected by the Office of the Presidential Personnel, PPO. Receiving guidance from the President, the Chief endeavors to implement the President's agenda by setting priorities for the WHO. This process begins by taking stock of the President's campaign promises, identifying current and prospective opportunities, and then delegating policy priorities among the departments and agencies of the Cabinet and throughout the three White House policy councils, the National Economic Council, the Domestic Policy Council, and the National Security Council. The President is briefed on all of his policy priorities by his cabinet and senior staff as directed by the Chief. The Chief, along with senior WHO staff, maps out the issues and themes that will be covered daily and weekly. The Chief then works with the policy councils, the Cabinet and the Office of Communications and Office of Legislative Affairs to sequence and execute the rollout of policies and announcements. White House counsel and senior advisors and senior counselors are also intimately involved. All senior staff report to the Chief of Staff, either directly or through his 2 or 3 deputies, unless the President determines that a particular assistant to the President reports directly to him. Most chiefs have interacted directly with cabinet officers and a select number of direct reports. In most cases, the direct reports to the chief are his 2 or 3 deputies, the communications director, PPO director, White House counsel, and senior advisors. Occasionally, the Office of Public Liaison, the Cabinet Secretary, and the Intergovernmental Affairs, IGA, also report directly to the Chief. Usually, however, they report instead to a Deputy Chief of Staff. The Chief of Staff's main challenge is time management. His use of his deputies, meetings with senior staff, and direction provided to the WHO must all balance with the daily needs of the President. A successful chief steers the West Wing using his management of and influence with the various individuals and entities around him. It goes without saying that selecting the right person to be chief is vital. Deputy Chiefs of Staff. In recent years, presidents typically have appointed 2 deputy chiefs of staff, a deputy chief of staff for management and operations, and a deputy chief of staff for policy. There also have been other types of deputy chiefs who have roles included, for example, overseeing strategy, planning, and implementation. Chiefs of staff have then occasionally appointed a principal deputy chief to be in charge of guiding decision-making, organizational structure, and information flow. Principal deputy chiefs of staff. Not all chiefs of staff have tapped a principal deputy. A major reason is that doing so adds another layer of command complexity. When principal deputies have been installed, their roles have varied based on the needs of the particular chief. Most principal deputies have functioned as doorkeepers, sorting through action items, taking on those that can be handled at their own level, and passing up others that truly require the attention of the Chief of Staff or the President. Principal deputies also have assumed control of the scheduling functions, normally under the Operations Deputy, and work directly with the policy councils at the direction of the Chief of Staff. The OPL and the Office of Political Affairs also have reported to a principal deputy. Deputy Chief of Staff for Management and Operations. The Deputy Chief of Staff for Management and Operations oversees the President's schedule and all logistical aspects of his movement within and outside of the White House. For example, both air travel on Air Force One and Marine One, and ground transportation. This deputy also interfaces directly with the Secret Service as well as the military offices tasked with keeping the President and his family safe. In the past, this deputy has also worked with the NSC, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the intelligence community on advancing all foreign trips. If their roles are separated from that of the policy deputy, this deputy should have a strong grasp of international affairs and robust foreign policy credentials. This deputy further manages all facets of the working White House: technology, grounds management, support staff, personnel administration, and communications. This individual therefore needs to be meticulous and ideally should possess a great deal of command and control experience. Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. In some administrations, the function of the IGA, OPA, and OPL and other advisors within the WHO have fallen under the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. For conservatives, this arrangement could help to connect the WHO's outreach to political and external groups and be a strong conduit for state and local elected officials, state party organizations, and both grass top and grassroots groups. This deputy chief works directly with the chief of staff, cabinet officers, and all three policy councils to support the development and implementation of the president's agenda. This deputy chief should therefore have impressive policy credentials in the realms of economic, domestic, and social affairs. Senior advisors. Presidents have surrounded themselves with senior advisors whose experience and interests are not necessarily neatly defined. In recent administrations, senior advisors have been appointed to offer broad guidance on political matters and communications issues. Others have acted as czars for specific projects or policy areas. The most powerful senior advisors frequently have had a long personal relationship with the president and often have spent a significant amount of time with him within and outside of the White House. They have been asked not only to provide guidance on a variety of policy issues, but also to offer instruction on communicating with the American people and the media. In a number of administrations, new offices or councils have been created to support senior advisors. For the most part, their functions have been duplicative or overlapping, as a result of which these offices have tended to be short-lived. Even so, senior advisors should be provided the staff and resources that their portfolios require. To ensure that senior advisors are effective, their portfolios must be clearly delineated and clearly communicated across the White House. This, too, is a responsibility of the Chief of